10 spine-chilling encounters exposed, forbidden cabin horrors in deep Appalachia revealed. The letter arrived on a day that felt like any other, but once the Millers held it in their hands, the air around them thickened like fog. Worn and yellowed, the paper spoke of family heirlooms, gems buried in the heart of Uncle Frank's secluded cabin, deep in the Appalachian woods. "Find me," it urged. Expectation soared, but so did desperation. Could this dusty letter be their chance to escape the relentless grip of financial despair? With excitement surging, they piled into their old sedan, the engine sputtering like a dying breath. They chuckled nervously, mixing the thrill of adventure with an undercurrent of unease. The winding roads cut through mist-laden mountains, where dark trees stood stoic, bearing silent witness to the journey ahead. Shadows seemed to dance among the pines, whispering secrets as they passed through hollowed-out towns that felt like ghostly shells. Each twist and turn amplified their anticipation, but they couldn't shake the sensation creeping up their backs. This wasn't simply a family trip, it was a descent into something unknown. Arriving at the cabin sprawled in isolation, the beauty of the setting screamed at them, yet the ambience was suffocating. There was an unnatural stillness, as if the trees held their breath. Wooden totems encircled the clearing, grotesque faces carved into their trunks, forming a haunting gallery that watched in silence. Unease settled like a weight on their shoulders, yet they brushed it off, attributing it to Uncle Frank's eccentric personality. Night began to fall, and the isolation deepened. Neighbors offered suspicious, sidelong glances more like phantoms than friends. A trip to the local diner unearthed disquieting whispers, the townsfolk exchanged murmurs and stolen glances, warning them without words. "You best keep close, there's talk of a thing in the woods," they say, their faces etched with fear. The Millers scoffed, believing they were merely caught in a web of local superstition. "We're family," they reassured each other, steeling their resolve to uncover the treasures tucked away in their uncle's legacy. As daylight surrendered to night, the wildlife around the cabin stirred a strange rustling, and the occasional snap of twigs underfoot echoed like unseen footfalls. It was eerie, sending icy tendrils up their spines. Jenny, the youngest, whimpered as soft whispers tinged her ears, her name spiraling into her dreams where shadows loomed, emerging in twisted forms that gnawed at the edges of her innocence. The idyllic facade of a fun family getaway cracked under the strain of a growing, omnipresent dread. They uncovered Uncle Frank's connection to ancient lore. The tale spun of revengeful spirits lurking in the forest, restless souls awaiting trespassers to disturb their peace. A wild-eyed woman with tangled hair and fervor in her gaze warned them, "Leave. The woods bend to a darkness you cannot understand." The Millers' heads spun with disbelief, yet they remained, convinced the riches would change their lives. From that moment, every creak in the cabin sounded like a whispered confession, shadows stretched like claws from corners of the room, and the forest loomed closer like a predator ready to pounce. Just when they thought they could settle into their new reality, the sheriff ambled by, his too-sweet smile revealing confidence in his corrupt demeanor, eyes gleaming with insatiable greed. Panic tightened their throats as they faced the reality escape was but a distant whisper away. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know. Who's on the other side of the screen? Now let's continue. As the shadows deepened, the forest felt alive, thrumming with some dark purpose, whispering cruelly in the night. With escape routes choked off by unseen hands, their desperation mounted. The cabin's walls felt as if they might close in on them, the past threatening to engulf their future. They raced for answers, adrenaline pounding, only to find themselves standing on the threshold of an unspeakable lineage. Each noise resonated ominously, the woods growing thicker around the flimsy sanctuary. Would they uncover the horrors Uncle Frank left behind, or become part of the very darkness he tried to conceal? The night deepened like an ink stain spreading across the sky. The Millers huddled inside the cabin, every shadow twisting into something sinister. The creaks of the old wood sounded like the groans of buried secrets awakening from long slumber. They exchanged fearful glances, the bravado they carried fracturing under the weight of unseen eyes. Tom, their father, nervously paced the floor. "We need to find that treasure and get out of here," he muttered, yet even his voice trembled with uncertainty. "It's just an old cabin, old stories," but as soon as he spoke, a loud thud echoed from the forest beyond, rattling the windowpanes. "Did you hear that?" Jenny squeaked, clutching her sister's arm. Her wide eyes glimmered with dread, reflecting their reality. There was something out there, something resonant with pain and vengeance. "I'll check it out," Mike, the older brother, said, almost defiantly, trying to mask his fear under a cloak of bravado. He grabbed a flashlight, the beam quivering as he stepped outside. The door creaked open, a hesitant invitation into the darkness. "Be careful." Emily, his mother, gasped, her voice breaking. The forest swelled around him, a black maw swallowing light. The woods felt different in the dark, swollen with breathing, as if the trees exhaled a knowledge long hidden. The rustling grew louder, circling him, weaving tales of lost souls and their eternal lament. He turned slowly, the flashlight flickering as an unnatural chill caressed his skin. "Hello?" He called out, but the sound vanished into whispers that danced just beyond his reach. The flicker settled, shadows slithered across the ground, trying to intertwine with his fear, tugging at the hem of his sanity. Then he saw it, a figure, half-formed, darting between two trees. Heart racing, he followed, the light beam straining to catch up. Just as he neared, it vanished, leaving behind only silence. An old saying echoed in his mind, "Not all things hiding in the woods should be disturbed." His breath came fast, panic clawing at his chest. He turned back toward the cabin, his pulse a frantic drumbeat urging him home. Inside, chaos erupted. Jenny's face was pale as she pointed to the ceiling. "There's something up there." A thud, heavy and loud, reverberated through the rafters, accompanied by scratching, as if claws scraped against the wood. The sound churned the air like a storm brewing. They huddled together, eyes wide, terror making prisoners of them all. "Maybe it's just a raccoon," Tom ventured, yet his voice lacked conviction. The old couple in the diner had warned them. They had spoken of a shadow in the woods, a thing that twisted men's hearts and fed on fear. "Get the flashlights, we should investigate," Mike said, trying to regain control even as dread tightened its grip. Against every instinct, they climbed the staircase, the wood creaking beneath their weight. Shadows chased them, darting just out of view. Every corner seemed to shift, teasing them with glimpses of a lurking presence. As they reached the upper hallway, they caught a glimpse of something pale slipping through an open window into the night. "Did you see that?" Tom's heart raced. "What was it?" Emily asked, her voice barely a whisper. A figure beckoned from the darkness, its face obscured yet exuding a palpable torment, its eyes like pools of endless night staring back at them. "You shouldn't have come," it croaked, the voice sharpening like glass. Panic surged, forcing their feet back down the stairs, retreating from the haunting truth that they were not alone. As they pulled open the door, something slammed against it from outside, blocking their escape. Shadows poured into the cabin like liquid night, and they trembled, knowing they were trapped. "What do we do?" Jenny's voice quivered, drowning in despair. Tom grabbed her shoulders. "We stick together. No matter what," but his words sounded feeble in the deafening silence that ensued. And as they braced for the storm about to break around them, a chilling thought punctured through his panic. What if Uncle Frank wasn't safeguarding the treasure but rather had invited something far worse to feast upon their souls? The walls trembled as whispers grew louder. The claustrophobic darkness swirled, closing in, and all they could do was wait for whatever lurked beyond the door. But the door wouldn't hold forever. Would it be their escape or their doom? The darkness surged as if it were alive, smothering the cabin in a cold embrace. The noise outside was deafening now, a cacophony of rustling leaves and snapping branches, each sound a mocking promise of what was to come. Tom's heart thudded in his chest like a war drum, each beat shouting for survival. Just as he thought about breaking the silence, the sound of nails scraping against wood resumed, louder this time, drawing closer, taunting them. "We can't stay here," Mike shouted, gripping the back of the couch for support. His face was pale, a mask of sheer terror. "Where do we go?" "It's everywhere," Emily cried, a knot of fear tightening in her throat. She darted her eyes around the room, seeking some escape that didn't exist. "Maybe the attic," Mike suggested, but even he hesitated, remembering the figure that had slipped through the window. The attic was a perfect hiding spot, yes, but was it also a trap? Another thunderous bang jolted them. This time, the door shuddered violently, as if something viciously pressed against it, wanting desperately to burst through. "Hold it!" Tom yelled, rushing to brace himself against the door, sweat trickling down his forehead. Jenny and Emily clutched each other tightly, their breaths coming in short, terrified gasps. Mike darted over to the window to look outside, the flashlight beam cutting through the encroaching shadows. "Get away from there!" Tom yelled, feeling rage mix with fear. The moment Mike had rolled up the curtain, the darkly lit wood seemed to lean in, hungrily watching. "What is it?" Mike's voice wavered as he stepped back, an uneasy feeling knotting his stomach. "I thought I saw something right there. Just in the tree line." It looked like what?" Jenny pressed, her eyes wide. "Like Uncle Frank." The name hung in the air, heavy and suffocating, like a noose tightening around his throat. "What?" Tom's voice was a whisper of disbelief. "But he's been missing, right?" "No. He wasn't missing." Mike's panic cracked through. The diner lady said he vanished after. He shut his eyes, forcing the memories back, but they flooded like a torrent. Frank had gone into the woods searching for something. The old tales he funneled into their minds, filled with horrors, were no longer stories, they had become reality. "Listen," Tom urged, his voice firm but trembling. "If he's out there, if he's part of this, maybe we need to leave." But before they could deliberate, the door crashed open, splintering wood flying through the air like deadly shrapnel. Everyone froze in place, eyes wide with terror as clawed hands reached inside, dragging the darkness with them. In that moment, shadows poured in, twisting and shifting like a living thing, exhaling a rancid breath that filled their nostrils. A ghastly figure emerged, its form twisted, a malignant mockery of humanity. "You trespassed, Millers," the voice dripped with malice, echoing through the cabin and sending ripples of dread down their spines. "You've awakened what was meant to stay buried." As panic surged again, the Millers retreated into the far corner of the room. Their minds raced in chaos. Was this the thing that had consumed Uncle Frank? Or had he joined it? The cabin shivered, the very walls trembling as the entity loomed closer. Shadows curled around them, a cold grip tightening like a vice. Each family member felt the beckoning pull of despair merging with terror. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure paused, its eyes black as night exploding with malicious glee. "But there's something far worse that's coming for you." Outside, the wind howled, swelling like a hunter's cry. The very trees quaked, roots clawing through the soil, ready to either claim the Millers or shield them in darkness. With a sudden rush, shadows surged forth, enveloping everything in a suffocating blanket. As the light blinked out, a single piercing thought drilled through Tom's mind: they had stepped into a realm of nightmares. But even deeper within the darkness, something stirred, something ancient stirred with intent. What haunted them wasn't just an evil spirit, and it wasn't merely the chilling wrath of the woods. A choice awaited in that consuming blackness: would they be the final sacrifice, or find the strength to sever the darkness from its roots? As the shadows twisted closer, something massive loomed behind the figure, waiting poised to strike. Would they become slaves to their fear, or conquer the malevolence lurking just beyond their reach? The room grew colder, icy fingers stretching through the cabin as if the shadows sought to grasp them. The figure lingered, its mouth twisting into a gaping hollow, revealing rows of jagged teeth glistening with an unholy darkness. The Millers huddled closer, hearts racing, adrenaline pumping through their veins in a frantic rhythm. "Don't look at it!" Tom shouted, his instincts kicking in. "Look away!" But their gaze was glued to the embodiment of terror before them, drawn in like moths to the flame. Jenny whimpered, clutching Emily, who was nearly hyperventilating. "What do you want?" Mike managed, his voice trembling. The question hung uselessly in the air, a feeble attempt at bargaining with the void. The figure didn't answer directly. Instead, it waved a clawed hand dismissively. "You dare ask, yet the answer is already entwined with your fates. You will learn what you have awakened and what must be paid." A gust of wind howled through the gaping doorway, sending shivers through their bones. The walls of the cabin creaked ominously, as if the structure itself was warning them. The darkness lurking around the entity felt alive, whispering secrets only it knew. "I saw Uncle Frank." Mike screamed suddenly, a surge of defiance coursing through him. "What did you do to him?" The figure leaned closer, darkness pooling like ink in the corners of its eyes. "He sought the truth," it rasped, the voice gritty and choked. "He should have turned back, but now, he belongs to the night." Fear twisted into a blade within Tom, slicing through any remnants of bravery. Uncle Frank had always told stories that now roiled in his mind, revealing truths too dark to comprehend. The forest, it was said, demanded sacrifices, a hunger that could never be sated. "Back! Get back!" Tom shouted again, pushing against the wall, desperate to create distance. And then came the noise. Snapping, gnashing, and the hollow clattering echoed outside. Branches were breaking, a roaring sound like thunderous footsteps. Something bigger than the figure was approaching, drawn by the turmoil inside. Shadows cast along the walls pulsed in time with their frantic breaths. "Run!" Tom screamed at last. "The attic!" They tore from their makeshift corner, adrenaline fueling their movements. The figure lunged forward but seemed to falter, as if the shadows holding it back were tethered to the ground. Up the stairs they darted, the sounds of chaos behind them. "Hurry!" Emily urged, terror sharp in her voice. They stumbled into the attic, breathless, falling against the aged floor. As they clustered together in the slanted darkness, a hollow pounding echoed from below. The walls vibrated, dust shaking loose. They held their breaths, fear coiling like a serpent, ready to strike. Mike glanced at the window as another crash sounded, this one louder and more defiant. "Do you think it's coming?" he whispered, wide-eyed, as they all turned to stare at the door, their retreat offering scant comfort. From the shadows emerged a soft, pleading voice, a contrast to the chaos outside. "Help me," it pleaded, fragile like broken glass. Tom stiffened, eyes narrowing. "Did you hear that?" The voice continued, strained, almost familiar. "Help me before it's too late." Sudden realization struck him. It couldn't be Uncle Frank? Tom felt the chill of his own disbelief crawling up his spine. The ground shook again, and the screams of 100 lost souls echoed through the cabin. Whatever was coming was nothing like they had imagined. As Tom and his family found themselves grappling with hope and dread, a flicker of light broke through the window, illuminating the attic with an eerie glow. Shadows crept against the walls, swirling, shifting. But in that moment, as they squinted through the dimness, the night revealed itself, monstrous and sprawling. A scream then pierced through the air, the unmistakable sound of a soul consumed. What had been planned for them was now a reality, and the weight of what they had awakened pressed down heavily. Did they have the strength or knowledge to confront what loomed at their door? Or would they be ensnared by the darkness once more? Before they could answer, a shadow, larger and darker than anything they had ever faced, swept through the attic, swallowing them whole. The darkness enveloped them, a suffocating blanket that smothered the faint light spilling from the window. They were lost now, swallowed by that shadow, the air thick with a coldness that clawed at their skin. The attic felt like a tomb, every heartbeat echoing in the terrible silence that had swallowed their world whole. Tom. Emily's voice broke through the stillness, a thin thread of panic. What do we do? What do we do? He fumbled in the gloom, heart pounding like a war drum. We keep quiet. We listen. His voice trembled as he spoke, the facade of confidence crumbling like old paint. The anguished cries outside had dimmed, replaced by an unsettling stillness that seemed to suck the very life from the cabin. It felt like the world held its breath, and in that suffocating silence, whispers slithered through the shadows. Help me, the voice came again, dragging at his resolve. Distorted and pained, its lilt was hauntingly familiar. Tom's stomach twisted with dread. Uncle Frank, he whispered, barely audible. Don't listen to it. Mike cried, clutching his sister as though she were a lifebuoy in a storm. It's a trap. It wants us to go out there. But the clarity of fear battled with the heavy pull of hope. They were so close now, teetering on the edge of knowing. Tom closed his eyes, trying to summon the courage to voice what everyone feared to admit. If it is Uncle Frank, maybe we can save him. We can't leave him, no. Jenny cried, her voice sharp with terror. What if that thing has him? It'll take us too. It already took Frank. The words felt like icy fingers gripping Tom's spine, but they also fueled a spark of defiance. What if there was a way to save them all? He couldn't let despair swallow them entirely. We can't just ignore him. Maybe the only way. Suddenly, a violent thump resonated from below, shaking the floorboards and their very souls. It was an invitation cloaked in menace, and a flicker of movement caught Tom's eye. The shadows against the walls twisted grotesquely, dancing in a rhythm that was both beautiful and terrifying. Get back! He shouted, pushing his family away from the darkened wall. It's coming! As if on cue, a loud crash echoed from below. The door to the attic rattled violently, as if something on the other side was testing its strength, eager to breach their sanctuary. They pressed together, hearts racing, listening to the heavy thuds that sounded like footsteps, no, strides, each one more powerful than the last, resonating through the structure like thunder. Please, they heard again, softer this time. Help me. It was a tempting melody, weaving through the air, but now it provoked fear more than empathy. Was Frank's soul truly crying out, or was it another horrible trick? Then, out of the corner of his eye, Tom caught a glimmer of light, a lantern. A single flickering candle across the room that should have been shrouded in pitch darkness. Look! He pointed, his voice a mix of hope and disbelief. But the light grew dimmer, gasping for breath under the weight of the shadows pressing in. Panic surged through him. They had to act. Mike, Jenny, get ready. Whatever happens, we stick together. Tom felt the urgency pounding in his chest like a drum. We have to go now. If there's a chance to save Uncle Frank, we're taking it. As they stepped towards the door, the world seemed to hold its breath. The presence on the other side loomed larger, darker, eager for their surrender. Fear radiated from every crevice, a vast sea of despair washing over them as they pushed the door open. But what they found was not the comforting light of the lantern or the relief of their uncle. The shadows had grown teeth, slick and glistening, and they were not alone anymore. And then the darkness surged forward with a roar, rushing toward them as Tom felt the icy grip of shadow close around his heart. What would they find in that consuming maw? Despair? Salvation? Or something far worse lurking just out of sight? With that thought echoing in their minds, the Millers plunged into the chaos, each second stretching like the very fabric of their fate unraveling. The moment they stepped through the door, the darkness exploded into chaos. Cold tendrils snaked around Tom's ankles, pulling him down. He fought, instinct kicking in as he kicked and clawed against the suffocating black mass. "Go! Run!" Mike shouted, shoving Jenny ahead of him. Emily stumbled back, gasping for breath. The shadows twisted and churned, writhing like a living entity. They reached for her, deep and hungry, but something flickered in her mind. Was it Uncle Frank? Was he there? "Tom!" she screamed, but her voice was swallowed by the shouts and growls now emanating from the depths. Tom managed to break free, hand extending towards his sister. "Emily! We need to stay together." But as he reached for her, something latched onto his wrist, a cold grip that felt impossibly strong. He glanced down, heart dropping. It was not a ghostly hand, but something far worse, something that twisted and churned, dragging him further into the dark. A spasm of ice drafted through him. "Help!" he cried, but the sound was lost in the thunder of the shadows around them. "Hold on!" Mike yelled, throwing himself forward, grabbing Tom's arm. The two brothers struggled against the shadow, a war of wills. Emily clung to the doorframe, her face pale and trembling. She reached out, but the shadows cascaded around her, luring her deeper into their embrace. The very cabin seemed to breathe, as if it was alive with the whispers of souls trapped in torment. Each breath stung, thick with despair, a weighted atmosphere that pressed heavily on their chests. "Tom! We can't leave her!" Mike shouted, his courage swelling. "I want tea." Tom growled through gritted teeth, the cold gripping him tighter. He felt the weight of something ancient behind him. If they got dragged in, there'd be no way out. "Fight!" Jenny urged, pale-faced but resolute. "We can't let it take us. We have to find the light." But just as those words left her lips, an anguished roar crashed through the air, the sound of old, haunting grief. "Help me! Emily!" Uncle Frank's voice echoed like a siren, full of pain and desperation. It was a cry laced with terror. Tom felt torn. The voice offered hope and dread in equal measure, drawing him in like a moth to a flame. "We can't abandon him. Or die in the process." Mike replied, yanking Tom back. He was growing weak, losing his grip. Uncle Frank, Emily whimpered, and the shadows leered, shifting ominously closer. "Jenny, grab her!" Tom snapped. She lunged forward, managing to pull her sister away just as a shadow lunged, razor-like claws grazing the hem of Emily's shirt. "No!" Tom roared, adrenaline pumping. They were losing ground, the abyss reaching out like predatory fingers. But then, a pulse of light flickered again in the corner, faint and throbbing, a lantern, mirroring the hope that was crashing away with each passing moment. "Over there! The light!" Tom yelled. They dashed towards the beacon, heart pounding in their ears as the darkness roared and sputtered around them, furious that they dared escape its grip. The air crackled with energy, pulling them with an urgency that felt almost sentient. Just as they reached the lantern, something cold wrapped around Tom's ankle, dragging him back. He looked down, terror blasting through him as he saw the swirling mass of darkness preparing to pull him under. "Keep going!" he screamed, feeling his heart race wildly. But Mike halted, staring back in horror. "I want to leave you. Go!" Tom screamed again, but the shadows clawed at him, relentless in their pursuit. With every muscle in his body straining, he fought against the encroaching black, knowing they might reach the light. It was their only hope, the frail flicker against the crushing void. Would they reach safety, or would they slip into that abyss forever? As the darkness closed in, Tom's breath quickened, each heartbeat hammering like a warning bell in the silent night. And then, just when he thought they might escape, a piercing laugh sliced through the chaos, chilling him to the bone. "You can never leave." What did that thing want? How far would it go to keep its grasp tight around their fates? As the shadows swept in closer, a gunshot cracked through the air like thunder, echoing into the void, leaving them vulnerable. What awaited them beyond the reach of that flickering light? And would it lead to freedom or doom? The blast echoed like thunder, vibrating through the air and slicing the shadows into jagged pieces. Tom's heart raced wildly, and for a moment, everything fell silent. That chilling laughter faded, leaving them enveloped in an eerie stillness that felt even more sinister. "Did we hit it?" Emily panted, her eyes wide with fear. Mike glanced at the lantern, glowing brightly, its light flickering like a heartbeat ready to collapse. "We need to get to the light. Now." He released Tom's arm, the shadows still clawing at their feet, desperately trying to claim them. Tom wrenched himself free with a final, forceful kick, the ice-cold grip retreating slightly. "Run!" he yelled, and they surged toward the glow, a lifeline amid the suffocating gloom. They neared the lantern, the warmth brushing over their faces like a long-lost friend. But as they reached it, something shifted in the light. The beam twisted, darkening around its edges, melding with the shadows that still clawed at their legs as if the light had never been there at all. "Stand in the light!" Mike shouted, pulling himself and Jenny closer. Emily, trembling and wide-eyed, stumbled forward, eager for safety. But just as they settled into the protective glow, something growled from the darkness, its voice a guttural rasp that felt like talons scraping against bone. "You think the light will save you?" A figure emerged from the inky blackness, its form roiling and amorphous. It was a mass of shadows with glints of what could only be eyes, shimmering hungers of 1,000 souls. A void where a mouth should be stretched thin. This was no ordinary spirit, it was pure malice. Tom's throat went dry. "What do you want from us?" he shouted, but the creature only laughed, a rumbling sound that twisted deep in his chest. "Your pain calls to me," it hissed. "The light is a fragile hope, and it will be extinguished. Not if we fight." Mike yelled defiantly, raising the gun again. The shadows closed in, weaving together like a dark tapestry. "You have no idea who you're up against," it taunted. "Frank belongs to us now." Emily gasped, stepping back in horror as the truth cut through her like ice. "Uncle Frank? You took him." "His despair nourishes me," the creature crooned, weaving closer. "And so will yours." Tom could feel the weight of fear crashing down on him, paralyzing every thought. They couldn't give in. They couldn't let it take them too. He gripped Mike's arm. "We need to find a way out of here. There has to be something, anything." The lantern flickered again, its light sputtering as if reflecting their dwindling hope. Around them, shadows continued to writhe, and a chill enveloped them, tightening its grip. They huddled closer together, fear threatening to pull them apart. "Where's the door?" Jenny whispered, scanning the room, but the walls seemed to loom higher, closing in, dark and distorted. "Behind the shadows," Mike managed, pointing. "But we can't go through if it knows." Just then, the shadows surged, lunging as one toward them. Tom swung the gun, but it felt useless against the seething mass. With a rush of frantic courage, he stepped forward, yelling, "Hold on to each other. We can't break apart." And as they clung together, Tom could feel his fear morphing into something sharper, a resolve sparking amid the dread. With a deep breath, he steadied himself. "We're getting out." His voice rang out against the sinister darkness, echoing against the ancient wood of the cabin. And then, as though it heard him, the darkness stilled, waiting, measuring their desperation. But would the light last? And if they could breach the shadows, what would they find on the other side? The air thickened, the silence stretching, and Tom knew deep down that the true horror was still to come. What lay hidden beyond the door they'd come through, and was Uncle Frank really lost to the darkness forever? A heavy shroud of darkness pressed down on them, both physically and mentally. Tom could feel his heartbeat thrumming in his ears, the silence amplifying the tension that enveloped them like a noose. He could barely see his friends, their faces were mere shapes, finally etched in fear. "Stay close." Mike's voice broke through the quiet, its urgency a lifeline. The lantern flickered again, almost pleading for their attention. The shadows paused, and in that moment, Tom realized the light was more than just a beacon, it was their only defense against the creature lurking just beyond their edges. Together, he urged, inching forward, dragging his friends with him. Just then, a deafening crack echoed behind them. Tom turned, the darkness swelled and morphed, tendrils reaching out like fingers grasping for breath. What was that? Emily whimpered, her voice barely a whisper over the chaos. Just keep moving. Tom rasped, fueled by panic. They navigated through the cramped cabin, desperately searching for a way out. Each step felt weighted. The beast shifted, its laughter a dreadful chorus that coiled around them. Are you afraid? It mocked, its voice a chilling echo of Frank's deformed and twisted. Mike, shaking now, leveled the gun again. Shut up, you monster. But it wasn't enough. The dark mass coiled tighter, almost as if it was enjoying their desperation. Shadows rolled over the floor, rising up to their knees. Your fear it's delicious, it sneered, slithering nearer. Tom. We can't stay here. Jenny screamed, her voice breaking. Desperation propelled them forward, but the walls felt like they were shifting, stretching into an abyss. Look for a window, Tom shouted. Anything, just to escape this madness. But each surface seemed resistant to their touch, solid and ominous. Then, the lantern flickered once more, flaring brightly, illuminating a corner of the cabin he had missed. Over there. He shouted, pointing. Just ahead, there was a door, a possible escape, but the shadows looked ready to pounce. Its surface was warped, jagged edges almost inviting them closer, but a thick darkness settled around it, waiting. I can feel it, Tom said, swallowing hard. That's it. Without thinking, he bolted toward it. Hold on. He yelled, gripping the knob. It felt burning hot, pulsing like the light of the lantern, almost as if it were alive. Tom. Mike shouted, but the voice was swallowed by the growing shadows. Ignoring their warnings, he flung the door open, a gust of wind rushing in like a breath of life. Darkness whipped around them, chaotic and wild, but the light from the lantern fought fiercely against it. Now. All of you, jump. Tom called. They surged forward together, the beast's laughter turning into a scream, rage bubbling over the unsettled air. But just before they crossed the threshold, invisible hands grasped at their ankles, pulling them back into the void. The air recoiled with desperate torment. Tom. Emily screamed, her fingers slipping from his. Don't let go. Tom rasped, clutching her wrist. In a flare of infinite dread, the shadows screamed, a cacophony of lost souls echoing in his ears, drowning out everything else. He felt the darkness pulling them back, tendrils wrapping slithering around his legs. Something cracked in the distance, a splinter of wood, a faint sound like a whisper. Release me, a voice clawed at his mind, a sinister call that felt all too familiar, a ghostly semblance of Uncle Frank. Tom. We have to. Mike screamed, yanking at his shoulder, but in that moment, despair gripped Tom's throat. They clawed at the doorway, desperately trying to cross into the light. But time slipped away like grains of sand. And then, a strange stillness fell. The shadows hesitated, a moment of suspense that felt like a fragile heartbeat. Would they break free? Would freedom lie beyond the door, or would this hell trap them forever? The shadows bristled again, grim and insatiable, gathering for one last push, and Tom realized as panic flooded his veins that sometimes even the bravest hearts can shatter. Let go. He felt Mike's hands slipping, like they were all tangled in nightmares. But there was something there, lurking in the darkness, something worse than the shadows themselves. A flicker in the light, and dread gripped him harder than the pitch-black abyss. What will happen when they finally break through? And worse, what else awaits in the shadows' grasp? The wind shrieked, a banshee cry that echoed through the open door, sending chills slicing through Tom's spine. He could hardly breathe, the shadows swirling around them like angry storm clouds, choking on their own darkness. "Tom! Pull us!" Mike shouted, straining against the unseen grip that tethered them to the abyss. They felt heavier, every sinew of their bodies bound by an invisible thread of terror. "Just grab on!" Tom cried, his voice cracking under the weight of fear. He tightened his grip on Emily's wrist, feeling her heartbeat pounding like a frantic bird trapped in a cage. A low growl from the dark mass roared, vibrating the very ground beneath their feet. "You want to escape?" The voice was liquid venom, twisting in and out of their thoughts. "You'll never escape me." The shadows surged, pulling Emily back like a predator snatching its prey. Her scream cut through the air, sharp and desperate, entwining with the laughter of the creature. "Hold on!" Tom screamed, adrenaline flooding his veins as he fought against the grasping darkness. Desperation sparked a new strength within him. Just as he felt himself slipping, a blinding flash of light erupted from the lantern, shooting out like a beacon across the gloom. The sudden brightness momentarily scattered the inky darkness. Shadows writhed in agony, retreating from the light with terrible shrieks like serpents recoiling from fire. "Get out! Now!" Tom yelled, knowing this window of opportunity would be brief. Then, in one swift motion, he leaped forward. He hadn't thought about the consequences, he simply acted on instinct. He felt his body clear the threshold, and for a moment, everything fell silent. The manic laughter stopped, the chaotic darkness faded. A jolt surged through him, the others tumbling alongside him into a cold, damp space. They landed hard on unforgiving ground as the door slammed shut behind them, a final thud echoing around them. Tom gasped for breath, adrenaline coursing through him as he searched for his friends. Mike. Jenny. Emily. In the dim light of their lantern, he could see them, sprawled out on the rough wooden floor of an underground tunnel. Their faces were pale, eyes wide and full of disbelief. "Is everyone?" Tom started, but then he saw Emily trembling, eyes darting nervously into the shadows that surrounded them. "What just happened? Did we make it?" Ignoring her question, Jenny whispered, "What if it follows us?" No one had to answer. Tom felt the air grow heavier, a palpable tension rising. The door to their escape was sealed with an ominous silence behind them. They had fled the clutches of one nightmare only to tumble into another. A dank smell hung in the air, and the ground felt uneven beneath them. Tom turned to survey their surroundings, a narrow, damp corridor cloaked in murky shadows. The walls were slick, dripping with moisture, and the dim glow of their lantern cast ghostly figures that danced across the surface. "Let us move," he urged, glancing around nervously. The memories of those horrifying sounds still haunted him. They had to escape whatever followed them. But as they stumbled forward, panic clawed at Tom's throat. It felt as if the very walls were alive, closing in around them. Sound seemed to creep in from all sides, whispers, cries, and that haunting laughter echoed like a twisted echo of Frank's mocking voice. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled, shakes vibrating through the earth, an ominous warning. "What is happening?" Emily shrieked, the fear thick in her voice. "I don't know." Tom shouted, freezing in place. Before him, the corridor narrowed, leading into pitch-black darkness. "This way," he instinctively called, turning down a new path. Just as they rounded the corner, the echo of footsteps behind them sent their hearts racing. Something was chasing them. Panic surged again. "Run!" he yelled. They dashed ahead, breathless and desperate, every beat of their hearts syncopated with their pounding footsteps. But it grew louder, scraping, scratching against the damp earth, crawling closer. They turned a corner, barreling into a larger chamber, but there was nowhere to escape. The shadows swirled at the edges of their light, thick and menacing. "Tom! We can't stay here!" Mike gasped, staring at the narrowing entrance. As Tom whipped around, something flickered in the darkness ahead, a movement that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. He squinted, straining to make sense of it. Guys, look! But before he could finish, the ground cracked beneath them, fissures opening wide and dark, threatening to swallow them whole. Move! He screamed, pushing them away from the ominous void. With their hearts pounding, they bolted toward the only exit they had, a flickering beacon in the chilling dark. Was the darkness truly gone? Or was it just waiting, biding its time before the final, crushing strike? And what lay ahead in this cursed underworld they've stumbled into? The chilling weight of dread settled in. They were far from safe. They had to find a way out before the shadows claimed them once and for all. But could they outrun what had hunted them? Could they defy the very darkness that seemed to hang on their every move? The chamber pulsed with uncertainty, shadows lurking like hungry ghouls ready to snatch away any shred of hope. Tom could feel his insides knotting tighter as panic threatened to claw its way up his throat. Where do we go? What do we do? He blurted, the urgency of their heartbeats echoing off the damp walls. Over there! Mike shouted, pointing toward a flickering light beyond the imposing darkness. That has to be an exit. With adrenaline surging, they dashed toward the light, the echoes of their desperate breaths mingling with the distant growls of the creature that pursued them. Each step reverberated through the ground, the horror chasing them like a dark tide. As they neared the light, it sliced through the oppressive gloom, revealing a narrow passage shimmering just ahead. But just before Tom reached it, an anguished cry erupted behind them. Tom! No! Jenny screamed, her voice laced with fear. He turned to see a shadowy mass reaching towards them from the depths. Run! Now! He roared, thrusting the siblings ahead. The shadows clawed at their heels, hot and fierce, no longer retreating into the night. With a burst of sheer determination, they sprinted into the passage, but it constricted, forcing them together. The air turned thick, and Tom's lungs burned. The shadows thrashed against the walls, each scraped like an angry fist. They stumbled into the small room illuminated by the lantern, its warmth beckoning them forward. The flicker brought flickers of desperate hope. Together! Tom shouted, gripping his siblings tightly. They formed a circle, bracing themselves for whatever horror was yet to come. The room twisted around them, dark tendrils snaking at the edges. We can't let it take us, Mike whispered, sweat glistening on his forehead. We have to fight. Tom nodded, feeling that rising spark of courage. If we can reach the light, we can reverse this. But the shadows pulsed, swirling violently as if they had a mind of their own. No more games. Came a distant voice, echoed in the shadows. Uncle Frank's voice twisted with malice. You will join me. Stop. Emily screamed, eyes wide with terror. You're not Frank. Foolish child. Came the growl, and the very earth beneath them shook with fury. But within Tom's heart, an ember of defiance ignited. Not if we unite. He roared, channeling every ounce of strength. They gripped hands tightly, the four of them, forming a small, unwavering force against the darkness. As he closed his eyes, he imagined the warmth, light breaking through the night like a beacon of hope. No matter what happens, we stay together. He urged and felt his family's presence solidify around him. The shadows lunged, but they didn't falter. The lantern glowed brighter, illuminating their faces, and like a spell breaking, the shadows howled, recoiling in agony. Now! Tom shouted, and they propelled forward, rushing toward the growing light. The light erupted, enveloping them as they charged through the remnants of darkness. For an instant, everything still, time suspended like magic. Then, they burst through into the open air. Gasping, the Millers stumbled into a clearing, thrown into the vibrant world beyond. The sunlight burst over them, a blinding warmth, washing away the shadows' cold grasp. They fell to their knees, hearts racing, every inch of their bodies alive with relief. We did it! Jenny cried, laughter and tears mixing with disbelief. But as they looked back, the forest loomed darkly, whispering secrets of the horrors that had clung to them. In the distance, they could still hear echoes, the faint, tortured remnants of Uncle Frank's essence. Is he? Emily hesitated, the weight of loss settling in her chest. Not yet, Tom said softly, the finality hitting him. We'll find a way to save him. I promise. With that, they found their voices rising with renewed strength. Together, they chanted, affirming their bond as a family, and issuing a challenge to whatever lurked within those woods. As they turned away from the cursed cabin, the weight of dread slowly lifted. They walked forward, leaving behind the shadows that haunted them. United by fear, but stronger for it, their shared journey became not just about treasures but about reclaiming their family. They could face whatever came next together, at last determined not just to survive but to shine against the darkness that tried, but failed, to swallow them whole. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss our next exclusive story. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this. Show your support for the channel. Only true fans can appreciate the journey.